Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet for your Tuesday, July the 11th. It is 7-Eleven day, so go ahead and get your Slurpee. All right, so Alex Newhook signs a 4-year extension with the Montreal Canadiens, who traded for his rights earlier this summer. $2.9 million per season. So, I mean, I guess we could say there's some risk to this, I guess, but not really. I went into how much cap space they had yesterday. This takes them down to, I think, like $6.5 million, somewhere in that region. In terms of cap space, once Carey Price goes on to LTIR. So Newhook, who didn't quite live up to expectation with the Colorado Avalanche, now gets a chance to do so with Montreal. I like Newhook's game. He has some pretty solid runs there if he can get it together on a consistent basis. This contract could look pretty darn good for Montreal sooner rather than later. Interesting looking at the Ottawa Senators, and Pierre Dorion apparently not willing to say that the Sens are going to make the playoffs, just that they want to be playing important games come April, which is not exactly the kind of praise that he was throwing at the team last year when he declared that the rebuild was over. So maybe there's a bit of a shakiness to the idea that they're going to end up being a playoff team. And remember, there's a new owner that's going to be watching this, and if this team doesn't make the playoffs in 2024, that might be it for Dorion. But Dorion talking about Alex DeBrincat and saying that in exit interviews, he could tell that Alex DeBrincat wanted out. He wanted to go. That there was no chance, just the body language, he knew there was no chance he was going to re-sign, and then his agent told him, yeah, we're not going to re-sign. Dorion not surprised there. So then there was the negotiation process. So there were other teams that the Sens were negotiating with, but DeBrincat wouldn't sign. So he's basically saying what, again, Bruce Garriock said, which was that the process was held up by DeBrincat himself or by his agent, where the Sens would be trying to deal with the team, and then the word would come back of, well, I'm not going to sign there. No, I'm not going to sign there either. And it came down to Detroit. The only team that was calling about DeBrincat who he was willing to sign with was Detroit. Now, if Yzerman did his homework, and Yzerman's been in this game a long time, I'm sure he did, he would probably have realized, hey, we're kind of negotiating against ourselves a little bit here. So when people talk about the return for Alex DeBrincat for the Sens, keep in mind that when you're basically negotiating with one team, it is very difficult to make a really good trade. One comparable, and it's accurate here, is when Ryan Kesler wanted to leave Vancouver, he was only willing to go to Anaheim, which left the Canucks kind of up against it, because you have to go to that team and say, all right, look, either we get this trade done with you, or we get this trade done with you because this player doesn't want to play with us anymore. So it does kind of, explain why the Sens return from Detroit wasn't exactly what Sens fans likely would have wanted. It is not as much as they paid to get DeBrincat. Dorion trying to spin it that, yes, we got 1 year out of DeBrincat. He played well for us, and then we had to move him again. But yeah, the fact that he wouldn't go anywhere except Detroit, of the teams that we're calling, there may have been others he was willing to go to, but either maybe they didn't have the cap space or they just weren't interested in the player. I will be interested to see how loud the boos are for DeBrincat when he comes back to Ottawa, because I think it's going to be there, and how long that goes on for. Does it just happen for the first couple of games back in Ottawa, or does it just happen every time he plays in Ottawa? That's kind of the fun thing, because sometimes fans forget relatively quickly, and other times not so much. So the fact that Ottawa and Detroit could be competing for the same playoff spot, this could be glorious. Elliot Friedman reporting that Brendan Lemieux is set to sign a contract with the Carolina Hurricanes, 1 year, $800,000. Now, where it really gets interesting is there are a lot of reports, and there have been reports for weeks now, that Tony DeAngelo is headed back to the Canes. Philadelphia is going to retain 50%. There's a prospect going the other way, yada, yada, yada. We've heard this before, right? So the fact that they pick up Brendan Lemieux, maybe this is a sign that DeAngelo's coming in and they're going to reunite, right? So we'll see what happens there. The Canes still reportedly after Erik Karlsson. I don't know if they can, adding DeAngelo and adding Karlsson, just imagining the headache that would give to Slavin and any other defensive defenseman, because, DeAngelo is very one-dimensional in his game. Karlsson, a lot of offense. There's going to have to be a defenseman back there to cover for him as well. And they've still got Brent Burns. So, I mean, this, and now Burns did, I think, play a solid overall season for Carolina last year. But it's definitely going to mean that things in Carolina could be very creative on the blue line. You have a lot of offense from that blue line and some pretty strong personalities. If they had Lemieux, D'Angelo, and Carl, if they added all three, including Carlson, that's some really strong personalities. I would hope everybody would get along in that locker room right out of the gate, and then you're good, because if there's some kind of whatever early in the season, it could just derail things. The Boston Bruins picked up Ian Mitchell in the trade for Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno. Mitchell has signed a 1-year extension with the Boston Bruins for league minimum, so that happened yesterday. Didn't make a video strictly on that. I thought, it's not much there. Ian Mitchell re-signing's not much there. So he's a young defenseman. Boston obviously hoping that he can make the team and improve the team's depth on the blue line. We shall see. Now, another name that's been in a lot of talks in the offseason, less so since the trade went down, but Pierre-Luc Dubois has been at a Dodgers game, LA Galaxy game as well. I thought I saw that he threw out like the ceremonial first pitch of the Dodgers game. At the very least, he was introduced to everybody. So he's making the rounds, right? He's making the rounds to kind of promote himself and the Kings and all that. But he also understands his reputation. So he's talking about how, he did make the trade demand out of Columbus and now the situation with Winnipeg. And he is saying that he's fully committed to being an LA King and talks about Kopitar and all this. And I honestly, I do understand where he's coming from. And I think he's probably telling the truth that he really would like to play in LA for the entire length of the contract. And that he's excited to be there. Again, when players are able to pick where they go, fans get mad about that. They do, because there's this perception of, well, my team wasn't good enough, my city was slighted. But, if I go far enough back in NHL history, almost every team in the league at one point or another has been seen as a pretty unpopular destination for players, whether it be free agents, whether it be as a trade target and all that. And definitely over the summer, I can do videos on players refusing to report when they get traded, all that fun stuff, which, again, I can think of instances going back as far as the 70s. I can think of, Ted Lindsay, good example, when he went from Detroit to Chicago. That was a punishment. It wasn't just, hey, you're a Blackhawk. It was, this is your punishment for what you're doing trying to organize a union. So, Chicago was seen as an unpopular destination at that point. And that was during the original 6 era. There's 6 teams, and there's one that people are like, yeah, nobody wants to be there. So it does happen. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.